Welcome to episode 36 of After the Breach podcast. We're your hosts, Jeff and Sara. Joining us today is Monika Wieland Shields from Orca Behavior Institute. And we're going to talk 2024 whale numbers today. We're not completely through the year. We're recording this in early December. And so we'll really be talking about whale numbers through November, but we're pretty close to the end of the year.
Yeah, welcome back, Monika.
Thanks for having me.
You might as well just become a host on us. You're on so often. We appreciate it. We love having you on.
It's always a good time.
You are, I think, the most frequently returning guest that we've had.
It's an honor.
Let's just jump in. We track our numbers on our tours, but you're tracking much broader data and presence of different whale species in the entire Salish Sea. And I'm just curious, in looking at the numbers from the year to date, does anything stand out? Anything jump out at you?
Yeah, there were a lot of whales here this year. Both the southern resident and big skiller whale numbers were up in 2024 compared to 2023, pretty significantly.
How can Bigg's numbers keep going up?
I know. I feel like it's going to plateau. It just keeps going.
And how high can they go, right?
Right.
So last year we had just over 1,400 sightings in 2023, and we count a sighting as a unique group seen on a unique day. And through November of this year, we're over 1,750 sightings.
Oh, so it's a very significant increase.
Yeah. Yep.
It's incredible. I mean, every year it just, there's more and more. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So 2017 was, I think, the first year we really looked at each other and were like, wow, this is a big jump of what's going on. And at that time, I remember thinking, how much higher can it go? And now we're well over double the 2017 numbers. And it has steadily increased every year, except for 2020, where we were about even with the year prior because of COVID and lack of people out there reporting sightings. But it's just been steadily going up.
I wish that we had been tracking our whale numbers on our tours going back to 2015.
2020.
Of course. That's data that we don't have and won't be able to get. But the last 2 years, we are seeing big killer whales on 86% of our tours. 2024 was up a little bit. We had 86% of our tours in 2024. They were 83% in 2023. So a little bit of a jump. But we're seeing them pretty consistently.
And I know another thing you track is not just like big sightings, but a number of days in a row that we have big sightings. So what's our streak currently up to?
Yeah, the streak ended for 2024 in early November, but all the way from March 12th to November 3rd, we had confirmed big killer whales every single day. So 236 straight days.
That's amazing.
Incredible.
A little bit less than last year's streak, which went into December. But really, I mean, I'm convinced there's big killer whales somewhere in the Salish Sea every day.
Sure.
We are, getting a little bit better, I think, at finding them and getting those reliable reports of them. But well over 200 days straight, March through November.
That's amazing.
And I'm really impressed with the sighting network and how it's grown and how many different sources of information there are out there, and that the information, as it should, gets shared.
Yeah, I think members of the community that see killer whales are now aware that they can be identified. And so there's an interest from the public, I think, in taking photos and videos, posting them online, and, finding out which whales did I see. And that's exciting for them to get to know the whales that they met. And it's great for us as scientists to get that data and be able to track over a much broader scale where whales are occurring.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And I really appreciate the large community of people that are contributing to that science. And I know there are people out there that have the belief, like, see something, don't say anything when it comes to whale sightings. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, the culture in that sense, I think, is hopefully starting to evolve. I think that used to be the case more maybe around southern resident killer whale reports, out of, a belief that because they're endangered, people shouldn't be watching them and that sort of thing. But it seems like people are realizing that there's a value not just with the bigs, but now sharing real-time reports of the southern residents, because that data is so important as well as they're changing their habits here to make sure that any protection measures are informed with their actual presence and in place. So people are increasing, I think, their reporting of both southern residents and Biggs in real time, which is fantastic to see.
How were the sightings with southern residents this year? Our tours, we don't really go see them. We do occasionally from a long distance if they're out on our way to other whales. We saw them on 0.03% of our tours, but I know they were here much more than that.
Yeah, so the overall sightings numbers are much lower, of course. They're a smaller population, and when they are here, they tend to be in just a single group a lot of the time. So it makes a little more sense with southern residents to look at days present. In 2023, for the entire year, we had confirmed presence of southern residents for 130 days of the year. And through November for southern residents of 2024, we're at 165 days. So over a month more of having them here with a month still to go.
Any thoughts on why that increase this year? I know it's like all anecdotal, right? We don't really know, but any thoughts?
Yeah, well, there's two time periods where we really saw the increase. They were here a lot in April, May, and June, which is something that we haven't seen in recent years. They were gone a little more, as is the new normal, in kind of July, August, and September. But then again, we've had this solid presence of them in October and November. So two things kind of going on there, and I think it's not surprisingly prey related. So Fraser River Chinook salmon numbers were up a bit this year, and Puget Sound chum numbers, the fall chum runs, were just off the hook this year. And so I think, as you know, they follow the fish, and we had a good salmon year, and so they were here more as a result.
Yeah, and that's something like on our last episode, we just talked with Alexandra Morton, and she was saying even up north that there's this little river that she was looking at that regularly had like 6,500 chum salmon coming back, and this year have over 50,000 chum in that river.
Yeah, the numbers just seem to be like that coast-wide. When I was down in Seattle, went and visited Carkeek Park, and historically they have, a couple hundred chum returning, and this year it was over 1,500. So we're talking like an order of magnitude more fish in some of these rivers.
What's happening? Why are we? It's great that we're seeing this increase. I'm just curious if you have talked to people that are attributing this to any one or multiple factors.
Well, the fact that we're seeing an increase across salmon species this year, I think might point to the impact of the fish farm removals in BC, where we've had several years now without those fish farms. So out-migrating smolts have had the opportunity to not pick up parasites and diseases as they go through there. Of course, it always depends on oceanic conditions as well. So it must have been, productive few years for those fish as they're growing up. And then just now we're kind of reaping the first benefits of what's hopefully a new trend of some increasing numbers as a result of these conservation efforts.
It's really cool. We talked about this on our last episode, as Sarah said, with Alexander Morton, and it's amazing how quickly salmon will come back.
Mm-hmm. Well, same thing with the Klamath River dam removal this year, right? Not even a season has gone by, and they're already seeing fish above where the dams were. So just incredible example of resilience.
Yeah, and that's the theme that we talked about. That was the theme. You give them an inch and they'll take a mile. We just have to get out of their way and give them that space. And that's a hard thing for us to do as humans.
Well, and that lends hope, I think, to other dam removals, Snake River and restoring the Fraser River Valley and others. And who knows what's possible.
Yeah. And I think it would be remiss to not mention the fact that this is not just an issue that we're like concerned with removing dams, but that we also need to be looking at dams that governments want to still put in. So there's some new dam projects, even here in Western Washington. I think on the Chehalis is the latest one I heard about. That we need to be cognizant of the impacts on salmon and what dams have done and how is that going to play into it.
And I'm hopeful that with these numbers that we're seeing post fish farm removal, the example of the Elwha, and then the example we'll have in the years ahead of the Klamath, that as those data sets grow, it will be even more obvious that this is the right path forward.
Which doesn't mean that that's what government will do.
No, but it's better to have the evidence at least rather than it being an unknown.
Of course.
An important step.
Definitely. Going back to some of the sightings data, With the Bigg's killer whales, did anything stand out with you? I mean, how granular do you go in terms of the Bigg sightings with particular matrilines, and who might be here more, who might be here less? I mean, I know anecdotally, it certainly felt like the 65As were here much less than they usually are. I think the T18s were here less than they typically are. I think the 49As were here much more. I feel like this past year than they have been in the previous few years.
Yeah, the 34s and 37s like have been around a little bit lately, but I feel like we didn't see them as much in the earlier parts of the year. But again, all anecdotal.
But it's so fascinating to me, just from an observer, that the trend, like their preferences change over time, and some years they're here a lot, some years they're not. It's interesting to me, like what's going on.
Well, you get tired of the same restaurant, you got to go to a different one.
Some do, some don't get tired, because
Yeah.
we have matrilines like the T137s, T99s that are consistently, make it at least one appearance 10 or 11 months in the Salish Sea every year, and that remains the same. But we are tracking things at the matriline and the individual level. Jeff, you had mentioned the T65As, so I looked at those numbers specifically. 80-something days, both last year and this year.
Wow.
So I think they're just not hanging out in the San Juans as much this year. But they spent some good chunks of time in Puget Sound.
They definitely seem to like it down there. But yeah, I don't think I saw them on more than maybe 3 to 5 tours total. With the exception of 65A5. I think I've seen him more often because he's going to be with whoever's out there.
So I did take a look at who was here less this year compared to last year and who was here more. And Sarah, your anecdotal observation is spot on. Less of the T34s and T37s this year. I'm curious on some of these other matrilines if it's a surprise to you or not. Much less of the T109As this year. Does that reflect your observations?
Yeah, I don't often think this is gonna sound bad. I don't often think of the T109As. Really, because when they're here, I feel like they're mostly like Victoria or West, and we usually have whales closer than that, so we don't go to them. But yeah, I would say now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, they would have been one I was like, yeah, I guess I didn't hear about them as much this year.
But I feel like the 109A2s were here quite a bit. There was a stretch during the season where they were here.
Yeah, kind of late spring.
It felt like for weeks, every single day we were seeing them.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was like 5 weeks straight or something they were here. But also in the less column, T125A and T128.
Yeah.
The brothers.
Yeah.
T60s.
Interesting.
Not T60D and E.
I was going to say, I was about to ask, does that include D&E? Because it feels like they were here quite a bit this year.
Yeah, they were here about the same amount as 2023, but the T60s proper, quite a bit less.
Yeah, because I would say usually August, September for the T60s, we have like a pretty solid like run of them kind of being at turn point, like go to turn point and find them at turn point.
Right.
And making kind of like a circuit around the islands. And I guess, no, we didn't see that as much this year. I think I only found them over there once.
Who do you guys think was here more this year?
Like I said, 49As, I feel like they were here more.
Was pretty even, pretty consistent for the year prior.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're just here a lot, period.
They're one of my favorites. I'm glad they're here a lot.
Sarah, any guesses?
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain.
What about the T18s? Were they here less than they were in 2023?
I don't think so. They were here a lot as well.
Wow. Interesting.
But T65Bs here a lot more this year.
Yeah, we had some great trips with the T65Bs. They're
T63.
Yep, he's in that column 63 and 65 here a lot more this year.
Yeah.
So we used to always expect, Chainsaw and Mom to make an appearance like in April. And now it seems like they kind of come and go April, May, and June and are making another appearance in like September, October, which is new.
Yeah. Trying to think of who else.
Yeah, we saw them in October. And yeah, it was just surprising how many times. I mean, I love it. It's great to see Chainsaw and Mom, and saw them quite a bit this year.
T86As, this is going back more into the spring, but they were pretty infrequent visitors in recent years, but here a lot. And 3 new calves in that group.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, because they were all separated. I don't know if that I saw T86A proper, like her, But yeah, T86A1 with her calf, and then T86A3 with her calf.
I should have asked you about this earlier because you probably don't have this offhand. I'm curious when the last time the 49 bees were here.
Well, it was not in 2024. They haven't been here.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen them in maybe 3 or 4 years. I'm sure they've been seen somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like they have been seen last year, outer coast maybe, or off the coast of, I don't know, somewhere out there.
It's situations like this that I find really fascinating. You know, like the extended T36 family and all the different matrilines are all Salish Sea regulars. But then you have the T49s where the 49As are one of the most common matrilines. And then the 49Bs hardly ever make an appearance. And it's like, what's behind that? Do they just have different preferences? Do they not like hanging out with one another? Whereas other siblings like continue to get along as adults. It's just fun to speculate about.
It's T2B and T2C.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that maybe once, but I don't know if I've ever seen them together.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and then you have other families where they're getting together quite often. It is fascinating.
what about the T77s?
Yeah, they made several appearances this year, but I think definitely down from a couple years ago. You know, we had T77C and D split off a couple years and hang out pretty consistently with some other family groups. So I think with the T65As one year, the T75Bs last year, that kind of thing.
The 37As weren't here as much, I feel like.
Yeah, something weird's going on with that matriline. Because when they were here, they were not complete for the most part.
Right, they've been fractured pretty much all year this year when we've seen them. I don't think we've seen them all together very much.
Yeah, it was almost like T37A5 disappeared, and then there was kind of this fracturing.
Yeah, that's definitely what I thought as well. So T37A and T37A2 were around maybe more consistently. Both T37A3 and T37A4 have dispersed, at least temporarily, at times together and at times apart. One other individual that made quite a few appearances this year and was a new Bigg's killer whale for me, which I was excited about, T172.
I don't know if I know T172, but Sarah will tell me if I've seen T172.
Yeah, female with a really
you
broad,
have.
Oh, yes.
broad triangular fin.
Yes.
He used to travel with the 30Bs.
Yes.
And 117B.
And now with the 117As, I think, is who she came in with.
Yeah.
I also feel like the 35As were here more often.
I would say they were about the same. And if I was just spitballing, I don't know the numbers, right?
Yeah, I thought they were here more as well, but it looked like it was pretty similar to last year. But what was different is that no T38As with them.
Yeah.
So they were on their own a lot more this year compared to last year.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, it's and I'm very eager to see what next year brings.
Any predictions?
We should start a betting pool on predictions.
Hopefully the return of T18
Yes.
and 99B.
Who may or may not have a calf.
But she has a calf.
Has she been seen since that one grainy photo?
No.
Okay. I mean,
Do you need to explain this backstory?
I think she does now.
well, it was on
Out with it.
your birthday trip. We were out with Puget Sound Express. It was a really lovely day. I was very, very healthy at that point in time. No,
Yeah, I think they called it their sportiest day of the year in the water.
Yeah. But there was a reporting to Finwave, wasn't it? To Finwave?
Yep.
So someone reported to Finwave a photo from East Point. I think it was taken from East Point up Saturn Island. And it was pretty grainy, if my memory serves me.
Yep.
But it was pretty distinct. She has a distinct fin with the double notch. And we had a calf with her.
That's right. And no other whales reported with them at that point in time, at least with those photos. And she has not been seen with the T99s since then.
Right.
So they've been seen without her. The speculation is that might have been her first documented calf, but no real follow-up since then.
And we do have a new calf in the 34s and 37s.
We do. Cute little one.
Yeah, Jeff, you were out there the day it was first seen.
Yeah, that was...
Was that your sportiest day of the year?
It was up there. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It would have been really nice if they had turned to go up San Juan Channel, because then we would have been in nice, classy water.
Oh, kind of like they did for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, if there's one word I think of when I think of the T-34s and T-37s, it's cooperative.
Yeah.
Not really.
No. They ghosted me really badly on one of my trips this year.
Oh, I remember you came back and you were very upset.
Yeah, they were doing long dives, very spread out, and I think we had like a 25-minute period in between sightings, and we left and went to another group. But yeah, we saw the new calf out. They were on a stellar sea lion hunt and saw the brand new calf, and I'm happy that you guys got out.
Me too.
There. Yeah,
I was really excited when that was who it was.
Yeah, so appears to be traveling with T-34A, so tentatively a designation of T-34A2, her second documented calf.
Hopefully she keeps track of this one.
Yeah, T-34A1 kind of dispersed or somehow separated from her family at like 2.5 years old and has not been seen in well over a year now. So we'll see what happens with T-34A2, but spunky little thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely right in the mix of things. We weren't there for the hunt, but there was a quick sea lion hunt from them outside Friday Harbor. We got there as they were prey sharing, and the calf was like right in the middle of it, being pushed around by mom, and yeah.
I think another prediction would be another year of lots of big calves.
Yeah, do we know how many we have so far?
Ooh, that's a good question for 2024. I don't know the exact.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up.
It's a lot.
Like
yeah.
8 or 10?
At least. Because I think we had 8 by like March.
It's definitely slowed down. There was a bunch, at the beginning.
Yeah, there were
of
a
the
lot
year.
early in the season. The first half of the season, I think we had a lot, and then I think it slowed down. But I think their population growth is astounding.
Yeah, at least 10, because T68C3 was just seen 2 days ago and has a calf with it.
Yep.
Her.
I think we're going to top 2,000 sightings in 2025.
Wow. That would be absolutely incredible. I would love to see our numbers get up closer to or above 90% for bigs. I mean, we're seeing some species of whales on 96% of our tours, which is amazing. It really is killer whales and humpbacks. I don't think we have had any trips in the last 1 to 2 years where the whale species, the only species we saw on a trip was a minke or gray. Maybe a couple with grays, but a handful, like two or three. The vast majority of trips are either killer whale, humpback, or both.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And again, just you go back 10 years ago and you say these kind of numbers for Bigg's killer whales on a trip, even humpback whales on this many trips. It just is mind-blowing how much things have changed. And
it is, and it's encouraging. These are the Bigg's killer whales and the humpbacks. You're talking about healthy populations, and they're growing. They're spending more time here, and it's really encouraging. And we're learning so much about them. And as their population is growing, I think we're both learning about their complex behaviors and social structures, but I also think their social structures are evolving as their population is growing. I think we're seeing things that you might not have seen in their social structure 10 years ago when their population was smaller.
Do you think that they're doing those new behaviors, or do you think because we're observing them more frequently, we're just seeing those behaviors? I think it's the latter.
I think it's a combination. I don't think it's a one or the other. I think it's a combination. I think certainly we're seeing more than we've ever seen. The big killer whales have never been viewed this much, this often. We're really just learning their culture now. But I also think as their population has gotten so much bigger in the last 10 years, I think to me it makes sense that also creates changes in their population and in their social structure and the way they relate to each other.
yeah, I do think you're right, Sarah, that a lot of the unique things we observe may have been happening all along. But the one thing that I wonder about specifically is like the juvenile dispersal, like whales temporarily going off at quite young ages on their own.
Yeah.
It seems like with some of the family groups that were regulars, even decades ago, that's something researchers might have been able to observe. But now it makes sense that in an area with such abundant food, maybe you can trial your independence. You're more likely to have success hunting at a younger age with more inexperience in a place with abundant prey. And so I do wonder if that's a newer development.
Yeah, and especially with a much, I don't know, larger population. And as far as we know, like, and have observed, there's not really this level of territorialness that if you needed something and mom wasn't around, like, there's probably going to be other whales that potentially you could join up with, if you needed something. But again, that's totally like kind of on the mystifying scale of our.
Well, somebody's always around somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I think their chances of running into other matrilines and other Bigg's killer whales are much higher now that there's so many more of them and so many more of them present in the Salish Sea and nearby.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wonder if there is some hierarchical structure or factions within the population. I don't think any matriline would help any other whale. Mm-hmm. That's just my impression.
I'm T123. Come on. Let's just name names.
Were they here about the same?
I feel like they were here last.
I think so too. I didn't look them up specifically, but my impression is less as well.
Yeah, they felt like less for sure.
I totally agree with you, Monika. I think that's definitely, like, just because they're not, attacking other whales or, that we see, right? That doesn't mean that there's not some kind of like hierarchical.
Well, in the infanticide incident that was documented several years ago throws a different wrench into that as well, where clearly there are some different dynamics that can occur between matrilines that are not always friendly.
Right.
Do we need to let people know what we're talking about? Because some of our listeners may not know. And we should do an episode with Gary about that incident.
I don't even know how 2016, 2017.
Yeah, the paper came out in 2018, so I think it was end of 2016. Yeah.
Up in Johnstone Strait, the members of the T46Bs were observed, and they had a neonate calf with them, T46B5 designation. And it was observed T68 and T68A, a mother and son, took the calf and drowned it. And the ensuing interaction between these two matrilines lasted hours, and there was, a paper on it that explains this better. I should have refreshed myself on this before that, but essentially the mother and son drowned the newborn calf, and the mother and her other daughters and son and kind of were in pursuit trying to get the calf back, but were ultimately unsuccessful. And as far as we know, they didn't eat the calf. It wasn't for, predation event. But yeah, and since then, the two matrilines have been seen together. They were observed off Victoria, within the last couple of years together, seemingly.
Just really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first documented case of infanticide in killer whales that has since been seen in at least one other population. But the fact, that they associated and appeared to be amicable in that subsequent encounters, it's just so fascinating, raises so many questions about what was going on and what happened afterwards.
Yeah, and at least at the time, I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but at least at the time, was the only documented case of an infanticide committed by a mother and son in a species other than humans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really just strange, like just very curious.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think there are factions, or there are matrilines that are closer with other matrilines and matrilines that don't really associate. So it's not like they're all in this one happy little...
I mean, look at us, and they're far more, well, some would argue they're far more evolved, than we are.
By contrast, looking at the southern residents, though, if an L-pod calf, or juvenile ended up separately, I 100% would expect J-pod to pick it up and help it. Right. I don't see that occurring, those factions within southern residents. They do seem like you're one of us or you're not. And if you're one of our population, we're going to, take you in or.
Yeah.
Not that that's happened, but that's my hunch.
I wonder how that would be if, say the southern residents had a population size equal to the Biggs. Would we still think that? Or, even look at the northern residents, for example, that, are between, 300 and 400 animals in that population. Do we feel the same way with the northern residents as the southern residents? And I don't know them well enough to say. To be
That's
honest.
a really good question. I really don't either. Like how much association happens between the different acoustic clans and that sort of thing, or how often they even all potentially interact. Like I could see there very well being whales born into that population that other members of the population don't know about and that kind of thing. Whereas with the southern residents, I think they're probably all aware of every birth and death pretty soon. But so yeah, the population size may very well play into that.
But I definitely agree with you. I feel like I would say the same thing about the southern residents. Like,
and it's not because they're innately nicer, right? Just to clarify, I think it's just a different culture and a different way of being. And yeah, a very different population structure and habit of association.
I think they're less complex socially, and they have less complex relationships. I think they have more straightforward relationships within that population.
I'm pondering that one.
And I don't mean less complex in a negative way. I just think that there's so much complexity in the big social structure and so many more variables between different matrilines and different individuals in the Biggs population than there are in the southern residents. I think like the rules are more clear cut and more absolute with southern residents. It's like this is their culture, and there's not really variations or variables of, some do and some don't. It's like their culture is pretty rock solid in how they work. And I think it's much more loose and open with the Biggs.
I do think the level of dispersal we see in Bigg's killer whales complicates things in the manner you're describing. But if we're talking about complexity of relationships in terms of maintaining relationships, I think the southern residents might be kind of more complex or advanced in that they have to all figure out a way to get along and stay in these extended family groups. Whereas Biggs, I kind of suspect if somebody doesn't like somebody else, they just disperse and do something different. And in southern residents, that isn't an option.
Yeah, I'm just
just
sitting here
about like living in my family home with like extended generations.
That's
like
exactly
never being able to leave.
That's exactly
no
where
offense,
my
mom and dad, if you're listening to this episode.
That's exactly where my mind went to was, wow, that is much more complicated and challenging and difficult. And I know that no one in my family listens to the podcast, so I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, so drawing the social network associations, I think, is certainly more complicated in Biggs, but the actual diplomacy perhaps involved in maintaining those relationships, I would argue, might be more complicated for southern residents.
Point taken. I would also, I'm going to be very optimistic and say that 2025 is going to have the return of 109A3A.
I like that.
That would be pretty awesome. Do you have a theory on where? Like, is she going to come up
who?
And is she going to turn up in the Salish Sea, or is she going to be kind of in the same region where she was?
No, I think she's going to turn up in the Salish Sea. I don't know with who. I would love it if it was 65A5, but that's just the dream.
If that happens, Sarah, we're writing a children's book about those two whales.
Okay.
I would love to see that. I don't know with who. Maybe the 69s, because they spend a lot of time out on the outer coast where like she's been sighted. Mm-hmm. But who knows?
My optimistic prediction for 2025 is I think we're going to see an uptick in the southern resident killer whale population. I think with the salmon runs that we've had this year, we're going to have hopefully a couple successful pregnancies and see the number go back up at least a little bit. That's my hope.
That would be amazing. I love it. It would be amazing to kind of get them on a good trajectory and kind of, come back off the ledge with them.
Yeah, we're very far from having a trend of salmon recovery being successful. We're in the very early stages of seeing some of those upticks. So it will really depend on if that continues in the years ahead. But if the salmon numbers move in the direction they moved this year, I think good things could be ahead for the southern residents. That's certainly my hope.
That would be fantastic. I also think we're going to have more humpbacks. I don't know when the increase is going to slow, but it just seems like we're getting more days of presence, more mom-calf pairs. I think with the Whale Watching Association, I think there were reported 15 new calves this year, and some some to very well-known moms, Zephyr, Fallen Knight,
Yes.
Raptor.
It's also been cool as I've
Divot.
gotten the chance to know some of the kind of Johnstone Strait humpbacks or humpbacks that are seen more often a little bit further north in the coast, that some of them are starting to make an appearance down here as well, like Black Pearl and her
Towers
calf this year. Yeah.
Astro Boy, who also has a calf, who's not really Astro Boy.
But Astro, was it seen down here? Or did you see it up
I did not see. I saw Astro Boy
off Galliano?
off Galliano. I didn't see a calf, but a few weeks later, apparently Astro Boy had a calf with her. So,
I have so many questions.
Yeah, me too.
but by far my favorite name for a humpback, Astro Boy.
I don't know. X-Wing is up there for me.
That's pretty cool.
I really want to meet that whale just because of its name.
You're both wrong. It's Vivaldi.
But you have to say it like that.
Yes.
Can you say it again?
No.
But our humpback numbers this year were pretty consistent with previous years. I mean, it really is June through December when we're seeing them. And the peak is October, November. August and September are really good. But it's really, if you want to see humpbacks, it's August through December.
And do you get a sense that you have to go west a lot to encounter them, or are you seeing them a lot that time of year around the San Juans?
Definitely in like September through December, we're seeing them in the San Juans because they're moving around at that point. They're moving quite a bit. Other than that, you go west or you go north, up into the Strait of Georgia. And in either place, pretty much every day, we were talking before we started recording that if we really if we're always looking for killer whales, but if things were different and it's like, oh, we only want to go see humpbacks, I think we could be close to 100% from mid to late June all the way through the end of December. We can always find humpbacks out there. And most of the trips that we have humpbacks, a large percentage of them are trips where we see humpbacks and killer whales.
Yeah, do you have numbers on how often you get both species?
I don't. That's something I want to start tracking next year. I can go back. That is data I can retroactively find and pull out. And I do want to start tracking that because it is a pretty significant number of trips where we do see both. It's funny because there's this misconception out there that, October, it's late, the season's over, very late and winding down. October is our best month for humpbacks, percentage-wise. We see them, this year we saw them on 58% of our tours in October. We saw October was 97%, or I'm sorry, this year was 100% for whales of some species. That was the only month this year that we had 100%. Last year we hit 100% in August. But our whale numbers are really from April through November. We're in the 90%, like low to mid 90s, in some months high 90s, 99%. Like June, July, August. If we're not 100%, we're at 99% because there was one trip that didn't see whales out of, one trip out of 4 trips a day, the entire month, every day. One trip that doesn't see whales is going to take that 100 down to 99. Yeah, really, if you're thinking about coming out to the Salish Sea to see whales, it's really more about weather than if there are whales here.
Yeah, that's very true.
So it's like the season is really based on when is the weather nice. And October, we do get nice weather. I mean, we're still going out now. We'll be going out a little bit around Christmas. You guys were just out last weekend, and you had a double header. You had killer whales and humpbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we did.
Thanks to Jason. Shout out to Jason. Found us a humpback right outside Friday Harbor.
And to passenger Sarah, who found the T60 brothers.
Yeah. 6.5 hours after the last sighting of them. Pretty impressive.
But back to your question, I do think in the fall we see them more around the San Juan Islands because they are moving around. So yeah, I do think. But yeah, any time of year you can see humpbacks, other than early spring, late winter, early spring. I do have one more humpback prediction. So
So your prediction is Zigzag's going to come back with a calf.
My prediction,
and it's going to be Nike as the father.
I don't know if it's going to be Nike as.
Oh wait, no, that wouldn't work out timing wise.
No, it wouldn't. This is the easiest prediction for me is that Zigzag will come back in the spring.
But you said she was really round.
crazy. Yes, crazy round. Like we got a breach out of her. This was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and yeah, she's pregnant. I mean, she's massive. So that's my last prediction.
Time will tell. I think you need to follow up on these next year and
I'll
see.
have to listen to this episode again in the spring and just remember what we all said for predictions.
Yep.
Hey, and if any of you have predictions for this next year, send them over to us after the breach podcast at gmail.com.
You know what I love about our episodes with the three of us?
What?
There's always a lot of long pauses.
Yeah, but I edit those out, so no one really knows.
You can edit this
Now
out
you just told them.
You can edit it out.
What are you implying? That there's more awkward pauses when you have me as a guest?
No, it's not. It's just like we stop and like.
We're very comfortable with each other.
Yeah, we're comfortable in each other's silence.
Not really.
Any final predictions for 2025? Oh, I got one more. More days of northern residents down in the lower Salish Sea.
Define lower Salish Sea.
Yeah.
South of Nanaimo.
I think over by Howe Sound, potentially.
Yeah, so the A5 pod, am I getting that right? A23s, A25s,
They were there.
A42s. Mm-hmm. Spent quite a bit of time in January and February around Howe Sound and the Sunshine Coast this year. Again, with reports that there were a lot of winter blackmouth, so overwintering Chinook salmon in that area. So I think you certainly could be right that we may continue to see an uptick in northern residents. I don't know about south of Nanaimo, but I sure hope so. It'd be awesome to get to see them here.
It would be great. I would love to see. We started our year. They were our first whales of 2024.
Okay, now we're going to get them in prediction. February 6th. Everybody be here. It's going to be a nice, calm day. They're going to be up there. We're going to go. We're going to find them. We're going to have... I'm going to be super jet lagged. Probably sleep on the boat. But you wake me up and I'll spot them.
You'll be fresh back from Australia, but if they are hanging out there, we are going to see them, and we will make our half-day tour an all-day tour, which isn't that much different at that time of year.
That's what we do anyway.
You're only adding an hour or two, but if they're up there again, we will definitely go. So
it was really cool seeing them up there, and I was so sad that Monika wasn't there. I'm sorry to be talking about this with you on the podcast, but we had some amazing time up north in Johnston Strait with him, so hopefully that was a little bit of a balm. But yeah,
well, if you go in 2025, tell me.
Yes,
and I'm coming.
We didn't know. We didn't know. To be fair, we didn't
know we were going until
I knew you were going before you did.
Is that's your last prediction?
That was your
February. No, you're predicting February 6th.
That's the boldest prediction of the episode.
Very, very specific.
I know it's not going to come out, but I'm just going to put it out there. You never know.
I bet they'll be up there on February 6th. It's a reasonable guess, but will you be able to get there is another question.
No, our boats can handle anything. Just kidding.
We're going February 6th, whether the northern residents are there or not.
We find the T101s.
They're always up there. All right, Monika, last final predictions for next year.
I think I'm going to have some calf predictions, but I need to think about it.
Yeah, calf predictions is a good one. I feel like T123 is due for another one.
Really? You think she's going to have another one?
I do.
That would be cool. Do you think that would maybe, like, Stanley would finally disperse?
Maybe. Something crazy is going to happen with the 123s.
I like it.
Do you have a killer whale calf prediction?
I would love to see one more 65A.
I would too. I don't think it's going to happen though.
I don't think so either, but I'd keep hoping for it. I think one more for 65A would be pretty cool.
All right, we've got 2025 mapped out here across all species.
I'll come up with my calf predictions later.
Oh yeah, after they're born.
Yeah, what at the end of 2025?
No, like tonight. All
right, well, Sarah will be re-recording an additional.
I'll post it as a comment on the episodes.
Excellent. All right, I think we're going to be watching to see what happens in 2025.
Regardless of what happens, there's going to be a lot of whales here.
Yes. That we know. So come on out and let us show you this amazing place and come see whales with us. But the most important thing that you need to do between now and then,
stay safe out there. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of After the Breach podcast. If you've enjoyed it and want to help us out, please share this with your friends, family, and any other whale-loving folks you can think of. We would also love to hear your feedback, so please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have topics you're interested in and would like to hear on the show, please send us an email. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find us on Instagram as @AfterTheBreach and on Facebook as After the Breach Podcast. And if you'd like to go whale watching with us, then come on up to San Juan Island, Washington State. We run tours with Maya's Legacy Whale Watching, departing just steps away from the ferry landing in beautiful downtown Friday Harbor. It's a great destination for a day trip or multiple days and offers some of the best whale and wildlife viewing in the world. We would love to take you out on the water to see the amazing whales we talk about on our podcast. You can book a tour through the company website at www.sjiwhalewatch.com and make sure to mention you're a podcast listener when you book. Thanks again for listening, and remember, stay safe out there.